Did you know that 99% of people over 60 have no idea that their eyes are literally built out of protein? That's right. We've been told to eat carrots for vision, maybe blueberries for antioxidants, but almost no one talks about protein, and without it, your eyes begin to fall apart from the inside out. Now, some people will tell you poor eyesight after 60 is just part of aging. Nothing you eat can really change it, they'll say. Others argue it's all about lifestyle, that what you put on your plate can absolutely shape how well you see in your 70s, 80s, even 90s. So who's right? Here's the shocking truth. Both sides are missing something important. Because while glasses, surgeries, and supplements all play a role, your vision depends on whether your eyes are getting the protein and nutrients they need to rebuild themselves every single day. And the foods that can do that aren't exotic or expensive. They're sitting quietly in the grocery store, often ignored, even though science shows they can protect against cataracts, slow down macular degeneration, and keep your night vision sharp. Think about that for a moment. What if the difference between blurry headlines and clear reading, between giving up your driver's license and driving confidently at night, came down to a few simple foods on your plate? Foods you've probably walked past 100 times without knowing their power. In today's video, I'm going to share the top 4 protein-rich foods that strengthen your eyes after 60. These aren't fads. They're backed by decades of research, patient stories, and real science. And I promise number 4 is a food that most seniors aren't eating enough of, yet it could be the very thing protecting your independence years from now. But before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this video with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. That way, we'll have the motivation to keep bringing you more life-changing health insights you won't find anywhere else. All right, grab a cup of tea, maybe a notepad, because what you're about to learn could change the way you see, literally, for the rest of your life. Why eyes after 60 need protein like never before. When most people think of protein, they think of muscles. They picture strength, energy, and the ability to walk upstairs without getting winded. And that's true, protein is critical for muscle health. But here's what many don't realize. Your eyes are also made of protein. The cornea, the lens, and the retina are all built from structural proteins like collagen, elastin, and crystallins. Even the pigments that let you see color are tied to proteins. And the enzymes that power the retina, the most energy-hungry tissue in your entire body, are protein-dependent. The challenge is that after 60, your body simply doesn't process protein as efficiently. Digestion slows, making it harder to break down protein-rich foods into amino acids. Tissue repair becomes less effective, and your eyes, which need constant maintenance, begin to suffer. Cataracts form when proteins in the lens become damaged and clump together. Macular degeneration advances when the protein scaffolding of the retina breaks down. Dry eye becomes more common because the protein-rich tear film that protects the surface of the eye weakens. Put simply, without the right proteins, your eyes begin to fall apart from within. What makes this more concerning is that nearly 40% of Americans over 65 don't get enough protein, and many who do often rely on poor-quality sources like processed meats and salty deli cuts. These foods fill the stomach but fail to deliver the essential nutrients the eyes desperately need. As a physician who has worked with seniors for decades, I've seen the toll this takes. Patients come in complaining of glare at night, eye fatigue after reading, or the need for brighter light to do everyday tasks. Many assume it's just old age, but in reality, it's often linked to years of undernourishing their eyes. The good news is that this decline isn't inevitable. By choosing the right protein-rich foods, you can rebuild the very foundation of your vision. Studies have shown that seniors who consume higher quality protein, from sources like fish, eggs, and dairy, maintain stronger retinal thickness and sharper visual acuity. Another long-term study revealed that adequate protein intake is associated with a lower risk of cataracts. I've seen it firsthand in my own practice. One gentleman in his late 70s relied mostly on bread and hot dogs for protein. We added salmon, Greek yogurt, and lentils to his weekly meals, and within months not only did his energy improve, but his retinal scans showed slower thinning. Small, consistent changes made a measurable difference. So let me ask you, if your eyes are built from protein, doesn't it make sense to feed them the best building blocks you can? You can't stop time, but you can decide whether your eyes age faster or slower than your birthday suggests. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore the top 4 protein-rich foods that strengthen your eyes after 60, everyday foods that can be on your plate this week, backed by science, patient stories, and decades of experience. Because protecting your vision isn't just about clarity. It's about independence, safety, and holding on to the joy of seeing the world in all its detail for as long as possible. Food number 1, fatty fish, salmon, sardines, and mackerel, the retina's best friend. If I could choose just one protein-rich food for every senior over 60, it would be fatty fish. I know some of you might already be shaking your head. You're thinking, Doc, I don't like the smell. The bones are a hassle. I'd rather have a chicken breast or maybe a pork chop. And I get it. But the truth is, fish isn't just another protein option, it's medicine for your eyes. Fish provides high-quality protein, the kind your body can actually use to rebuild the collagen in your cornea and the crystalline proteins in your lens. But what makes it unique is the fat that comes with that protein. Omega-3 fatty acids, especially DHA. Here's something most people don't know: your retina is the single most DHA-rich tissue in your entire body. Not your brain, not your heart. Your retina. DHA makes up more than half of the polyunsaturated fats in your photoreceptor cells, the very cells that capture light and convert it into the images you see. Without enough DHA, those cells become weak, inflamed, and slow to respond. And here's the problem: your body can't produce DHA on its own. You can only get it through food. If fish isn't part of your regular diet, your retina is literally running on empty. That's when problems start. Cataracts may cloud the lens, dry eye becomes more stubborn, and macular degeneration creeps in. The science here is strong. The famous ARDS 2 trial, which followed thousands of seniors for years, found that those with higher omega-3 intake had a 25% lower risk of developing advanced macular degeneration. Another study published in Investigative Ophthalmology and Visual Science showed that seniors who ate fatty fish at least twice a week had significantly lower rates of dry eye and retinal thinning compared to those who rarely ate fish. Even glaucoma, a disease many think is only about eye pressure, progresses more slowly in people with higher omega-3 intake, because these fatty acids improve blood flow to the optic nerve and help keep it nourished. Now let me tell you about Margaret, a 69-year-old retired librarian who came to see me. Margaret loved her books, but she confessed that after just 20 minutes of reading, the words blurred. She assumed it was just age catching up to her, but the scans showed early macular degeneration. Her diet: almost no seafood, plenty of processed meats and bread. We made a simple change: 2 servings of salmon a week and canned sardines with whole grain crackers for lunch twice a week. 6 months later, her eye scans revealed stronger retinal layers. But more important than the scan, Margaret said something that stuck with me. Doc, I can finish a whole novel again without my eyes giving up on me. That wasn't luck. That was nutrition doing its job. And it's not just Margaret. A large review in Nutrients found that older adults who ate fatty fish regularly had sharper vision, lower rates of night blindness, and even improved contrast sensitivity, the ability to distinguish objects from their background, something critical for safe driving. Can you imagine how different life feels when you don't have to squint at road signs or feel nervous behind the wheel at night? Now, I know fish can feel intimidating to cook, especially if you live alone. But the good news is it doesn't need to be complicated. Canned salmon, sardines, and mackerel are just as powerful as fresh fish, sometimes even better because the soft bones in canned fish add a bonus of calcium for stronger eyes and bones. All it takes is a squeeze of lemon, a little black pepper, maybe a drizzle of olive oil, and you have a simple, delicious dish that works like natural medicine for your vision. Of course, you want to be smart about the fish you choose. Not all fish are equal. Large species like swordfish or king mackerel can carry high levels of mercury, which isn't healthy for anyone, especially seniors. The safest and most beneficial choices are salmon, sardines, trout, anchovies, and smaller mackerel. These are low in mercury and rich in the nutrients your eyes are literally built from. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat down to a meal that truly fed your eyes, not just your appetite? If you haven't had salmon, sardines, or mackerel in months, maybe even years, what would it feel like to give your vision that missing fuel again? Fatty fish isn't just about heart health or brain power, though it certainly helps with both. It's about your independence, your ability to keep reading, painting, driving, and traveling without fear of losing clarity. I've seen patients hold on to their driver's licenses and their confidence simply by making this one change. The retina is literally built from the omega-3s in fish. When you eat salmon or sardines, you're not just filling your stomach, you're rebuilding your eyesight from the inside out. Food number 2, eggs, the protein powerhouse with eye protective pigments. If I had to choose one everyday food that most seniors overlook when it comes to protecting their eyes, it would be eggs. For years, eggs carried a bad reputation because of cholesterol, and many of my patients still remember their doctors warning them to cut back. But modern science has flipped that old belief upside down. For most healthy adults, eggs do not increase harmful cholesterol in a way that raises heart risk. In fact, they remain one of the most complete, affordable, and powerful sources of nutrition. And when it comes to your vision, they are in a class of their own. Each egg provides about 6 to 7 grams of high-quality protein, giving your body the amino acids it needs to repair tissues, preserve the proteins in the lens, and strengthen the collagen in the cornea. But the real magic isn't in the protein alone, it's in the yolk. That golden center is rich in two of the most important eye protective nutrients we know of, lutein and zeaxanthin. These pigments act like natural sunglasses for your eyes. They filter out harmful blue light from screens and sunlight, reduce oxidative damage, and build up in the macula, the central part of your retina that controls sharp vision. In other words, every time you eat an egg, you are sending a protective shield directly to the very tissue that keeps you reading, driving, and recognizing faces. The evidence is undeniable. A study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that eating just one egg a day for 5 weeks increased blood levels of lutein by 26% and zeaxanthin by 38%. Another trial that tracked seniors for 2 years discovered that those who ate eggs regularly had significantly greater macular pigment density, which directly protects against macular degeneration. And here's the best part. Even though these participants ate an egg a day, their overall cholesterol did not worsen. In fact, their HDL, or good cholesterol, improved. Let me tell you about Harold, a 74-year-old retired engineer who came to me worried about his future. His mother lost her vision to macular degeneration in her late 70s, and he was convinced he was next. When I looked at his diet, I saw the problem right away. He avoided eggs completely, relying on cereal and toast every morning. I suggested a simple swap, 2 scrambled eggs with spinach cooked in olive oil. 6 months later, Harold's scans showed improved macular pigment. More importantly, he said, "Doc, my eyes don't tire the way they used to. I can finally sit with my woodworking plans again without that fog setting in." He didn't cure his risk, but he slowed it down and gave himself a fighting chance at independence. This is why I encourage my patients not to fear the yolk. That's where the eye protective nutrients live. Eating only egg whites means you're missing out on the very compounds that shield your macula. And eggs work even better when paired with vegetables like spinach, kale, or red peppers, because you're doubling the antioxidants that defend your eyes from daily wear and tear. Just be mindful of how you prepare them. Gentle methods like boiling, poaching, or scrambling with a drizzle of olive oil preserve the nutrients best, while deep frying does the opposite. So here's a question for you. When was the last time you enjoyed eggs without guilt? Could one simple change at breakfast, a couple of eggs with greens instead of cereal or toast, be the easiest way to protect your eyes every single day? Eggs don't stop at vision. They're also packed with choline, a nutrient vital for brain health and memory, and vitamin D, which supports strong bones and immunity. That makes them what I like to call a triple win food for seniors. Good for your eyes, good for your brain, good for your bones. Affordable, versatile, and easy to prepare even if you live alone, eggs deserve a place back on your table. They are not the problem, in fact, they may be part of the solution to keeping your vision sharp long after 60. Food number 3. Legumes, beans, lentils, and chickpeas, plant protein for eye circulation and pressure control. When people think of foods that protect their vision, beans rarely come to mind. Many seniors I've treated over the years dismiss them as cheap filler food, but legumes are actually some of the most underrated allies for healthy eyes. A single cup of lentils provides almost 18 grams of protein, more than 2 eggs, and that protein delivers the amino acids your body needs to repair tissue, support the proteins in your lens, and keep the collagen framework in your cornea and retina strong. But legumes offer more than protein. They are rich in zinc, a mineral that helps move vitamin A from the liver to the retina, where it produces melanin, the pigment that protects your eyes from light damage. Low zinc levels have been strongly linked to macular degeneration. They are also high in magnesium, which improves blood flow and relaxes the tiny vessels in your eyes, lowering the risk of glaucoma. On top of that, their fiber stabilizes blood sugar, which is critical because uncontrolled sugar damages the delicate blood vessels in the retina and leads to diabetic retinopathy, one of the leading causes of blindness in older adults. Science backs this up. A study in the Archives of Ophthalmology found that seniors with higher zinc intake had a 27% lower risk of advanced macular degeneration. Research published in the Journal of Glaucoma showed that magnesium improved visual field sensitivity, likely because it boosted circulation to the optic nerve. And for diabetic seniors, multiple studies confirm that eating legumes regularly lowers blood sugar, improves A1C, and protects the retina from long-term damage. I remember a patient named Mr. Alvarez who was 70 when he came to see me. He had early-stage glaucoma and was terrified because his mother had gone blind from it. His eye pressure was borderline high, and though he was on medication, he wanted to do more. When I asked about his diet, he admitted he hadn't eaten beans in years. I encouraged him to start small, just half a cup of lentils or black beans 3 times a week. 6 months later, not only was his blood pressure lower, but his eye pressure had stabilized, and his ophthalmologist told him his optic nerve looked healthier than expected for his age. Beans didn't cure his glaucoma, but they gave his body the tools to fight back. So let me ask you this. When was the last time beans were part of your regular meals? Could something as simple as lentil soup or a chickpea salad be the easiest way to support your eyes? Legumes are affordable, versatile, and easy to prepare. If you don't want to cook them from scratch, canned beans work fine, just rinse them to reduce sodium. Even 3 servings a week can make a measurable difference. Beyond protecting your eyes, legumes also lower cholesterol, support your heart, help with weight management, and improve circulation throughout your body. And since your eyes are filled with tiny, delicate blood vessels, anything that strengthens circulation protects your vision. Humble as they are, beans, lentils, and chickpeas deliver protein, minerals, and fiber in a combination that supports healthy eyes and a healthier life overall. Food number 4, dairy, Greek yogurt, and cottage cheese. Protein that rebuilds eye tissue and protects against cataracts. When most people hear the word dairy, they immediately think of calcium, bones, and osteoporosis prevention. While that is true, what many seniors don't realize is that certain dairy products, especially Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, can also be powerful protectors of eye health. Both are rich in casein and whey, 2 of the highest quality proteins available. Unlike faster digesting proteins, casein is slow to break down, releasing amino acids into the bloodstream over several hours. This is important because the eyes are constantly repairing themselves. Every blink, every adjustment to light, and every moment of focusing wears down tiny proteins in the cornea, lens, and retina. If your body doesn't have the building blocks it needs, that damage adds up, leading to conditions like cataracts and macular degeneration. By eating a serving of slow-release protein before bed, your eyes have a steady supply of raw material for overnight repair. The benefits don't stop at protein. Greek yogurt and cottage cheese also provide riboflavin, or vitamin B2, which studies have linked to a lower risk of cataracts. In fact, research in ophthalmic research found that seniors with higher riboflavin intake had a 38% lower chance of developing cataracts. These foods also supply zinc, which plays a crucial role in moving vitamin into the retina and protecting night vision. Yogurt brings an added advantage with probiotics, which reduce systemic inflammation and help protect delicate blood vessels in the eye. Casein itself has been shown in reviews published in nutrition reviews to slow down the breakdown of lens proteins, one of the root processes behind cataracts. I think of a patient named Evelyn, a 76-year-old who came to me because her night vision was failing. She hated driving after dark, saying headlights blinded her and street signs had become hard to read. Her diet explained part of the problem. Most evenings she had nothing more than tea and toast, which left her eyes without the nutrients they needed to repair while she slept. I suggested she add a bowl of Greek yogurt with walnuts and blueberries before bed. 3 months later, she reported a noticeable improvement. She said, "Doc, I can actually read street signs again at night. I still drive carefully, but I feel safer, like my eyes are working with me instead of against me." That improvement wasn't magic. It was the result of steady repair fueled by protein and nutrients her body had been missing. So I would ask you, what do you give your eyes before you sleep? Do you send them to bed hungry, or do you supply the protein they need to restore themselves overnight? Something as simple as trading an evening cookie for cottage cheese or plain Greek yogurt could change how your vision feels in just a few months. Choose unsweetened versions to avoid excess sugar. Add your own fruit or nuts for flavor. And if you are sensitive to lactose, look for lactose-free options that carry the same benefits. Pairing yogurt with berries, flax seeds, or spinach can turn a simple snack into a true vision-supporting meal. The advantages go beyond your eyes. Greek yogurt and cottage cheese also help preserve muscle mass, strengthen bones, and boost immunity. For older adults, that combination means stronger bodies, clearer vision, and better defenses against illness. They are more than snacks. They are tools that rebuild eye tissue, guard against cataracts, and keep your vision strong well into your later years. So there you have it, my friends. We've uncovered 4 simple, everyday foods that can make a world of difference for your vision after 60. Fatty fish to rebuild your retina, eggs to shield your macula, legumes to protect circulation and pressure, and dairy to repair tissue and slow cataracts. These aren't exotic or expensive solutions. They're accessible, affordable, and proven by science to keep your eyes clearer longer. And here's the big takeaway. Losing your vision isn't just about aging. It's about whether you give your eyes the raw materials they need to stay strong. Every meal is a choice, and every choice is a chance to protect your independence, your ability to drive, to read, to recognize the faces you love most. I want you to think about this. Which of these 4 foods could you start adding to your plate this week? Could one simple change, a serving of salmon, a couple of eggs, a bowl of lentil soup, or Greek yogurt before bed, be the step that helps you hold on to your vision for years to come? Remember, your eyes don't need miracles. They need fuel, and the power to give it to them is already in your hands. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing you more practical, science-backed health tips that really matter. Your support helps us reach more people and make more videos just like this one. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your health, and most of all, thank you for caring about your future. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay healthy, stay strong, and keep seeing the world clearly.